Aloha, everyone. Welcome to the UH Manoa Pre-Law Advising Center's Personal Statement and Resume Workshop slideshow presentation. Our event today will provide a general overview of how to craft your personal statement and resume for a law school application. As a quick overview, PAC is a pre-health and pre-law advising center open to the public. We're open from 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m., and our physical office is located in Physical Science Building at room 214. You can make advising appointments with us online using Star Balance via email, via phone, or walk into our office. The pre-law side of PAC focuses on providing one-on-one advising and assistance related to law school and the legal profession. Here is also a list of our other pre-law workshops for the fall of 2023 semester, and you can use the QR code in the flyer to register. And here is our agenda for the presentation. First, we'll discuss the components, formatting tips, and do's and don'ts for academic resumes, and then we'll go over the same types of information as it relates to personal statements. All right, so let's dive into academic resumes. Provided here are the main resume components. As you can see, an academic resume includes your name and contact information, educational information, and relevant experiences. You can also include sections for research or volunteer work or interests and skills, but these last two are optional and will depend on factors like your available space and whether these are relevant to the schools you're applying to. And here is a resume example. Notice how it is clearly and consistently formatted with headers and bullet points. It also uses lines to distinguish between key sections of information. Here is another look at the same resume, now color-coded or highlighted to correspond with the different components of a resume that we just discussed. Notice the order that the content appears in, which is a standard practice across all academic and even professional resumes. This resume has all of the components we discussed. Note that this person included a research category in addition to an experiences section. You can consider whether that's relevant for you. Let's take a look at another example. Here is a second example. Notice that the formatting is a little different based upon the person's preferences. This is key to remember. There is no right or wrong way to format or design your resume, but there are standard practices to abide by, which we'll cover more in depth in later slides. Using the same color-coded highlights, you can see that the resume still includes includes the main components, but left out the optional special category section, and instead use that space to add in more information about their experiences. Consider again whether this option might be a better fit for you. Let's review a last example. Here is a third sample resume. Again, notice how the formatting and stylistic choices are a bit different from the first two. Based on all of these examples, consider which one you like best and why. Reflecting on this information will help you craft your own resume. Now that it's highlighted, you can see that the resume doesn't include any of the optional sections, which again is totally fine if you don't feel they're necessary or relevant for the purposes of your specific resume. The student decided to focus more on experiences. However, if you feel you don't have enough different experiences to fill up the same space, then you can definitely consider adding in and using these other section components to fill up the space with other relevant information. Let's recap the basics of an academic resume. Be sure to draft the resume with the reader in mind. This will be the law school admissions faculty and staff who will be reviewing your application, not an employer. Make sure to craft the information towards the audience and include or exclude information that will help these personnel make a decision in your favor. Next, remember your resume is a sales tool to market yourself in the best possible light, not a book about everything you've ever accomplished. You want to save some of that content for a professional resume. Make sure your resume is visually clean and clear like the examples we just reviewed. First impressions matter, and the resume is one of the first things the admissions committee looks at. That said, the formatting style and organization of your resume can make or break their impression of you. Remember to be honest. In other words, do not exaggerate or misrepresent any information on your resume. Don't say you did things that you didn't or worked longer than you actually have. The admissions committee will have these files on record, and if they find out you lied or bent the truth to your favor, it'll damage your reputation. Lastly, be prepared to talk about everything in your resume at a potential interview if the school has that option or requirement. They might ask you to elaborate about specific experiences, and you should be able to answer confidently from personal knowledge. You can study and review your resume before an interview if you need to. Here's a list of key questions that you should ponder as you craft the content of your resume. For the experiences you list, what were the primary responsibilities? Choose ones that demonstrate your readiness for law school, like writing and research. Think about your skills and specific examples you can provide. The more descriptive, the better, but also remember that you need to be concise. Consider the different tasks or projects you were involved in and your overall impact at your place of employment. What did you contribute and how? Getting into the formatting and stylistic basics of a resume, remember to keep the length to 1 to 2 pages maximum. If you have 1.5 pages worth of content, try to lengthen that to 2 pages by adding more descriptions or shortening it to 1 page. Generally, it's not recommended to have a half page of blank space. Use standard readable fonts like Times New Roman and make sure to use black text only. While colors may be fun, generally black is your safest bet in terms of having your resume look professional. Use font sizes 11 or 12. Anything smaller is too hard to read, and anything bigger might take up too much space. Make sure your margins are no smaller than 1/2 inch on all sides. 1-inch margins are usually the standard. Use bold, underline, and italics deliberately and consistently throughout your resume to enhance readability. For example, if you bold the header for one experience in that section, make sure you do it for others as well. Consistency is key here to ensure everything looks clean and professional. Lastly, and very importantly, make sure your resume is error-free. Conduct a spelling and grammar check to make sure there are no mistakes. Again, first impressions matter, and having errors on your resume can indicate that you aren't very careful in your writing. Let's now go into the specific components in greater detail. As we saw previously, the header of your resume should include your first and last name, mailing address, phone number, and email address. Make sure the email address is a professional one. If you don't have an email address or you prefer not to list one, that's fine. You can also just include the city, state, and zip code you are in as an alternative. You can also feel free to list your gender pronouns here if you wish. Next is the education section. In this part of your resume, you're going to want to list your degrees in reverse chronological order, meaning that the most recent position or experience is listed first and moving back in time from there. In this section, you can also feel free to list any certificates, minors, honors, activities, or other highlights. This section should be kept relatively brief, so make sure you're not describing activities and honors in full lengths, and you're only listing them. Lastly, you'll note that you can include your GPA at your discretion. This is a personal choice that you should make with a strategic mindset. If you have a medium to high GPA, we generally recommend including it. Next of your main resume components is the experience section. Like your education, you want to list them in reverse chronological order with newer experiences listed first. Make sure to include the name of your employer, the location, especially if the organization or company has multiple offices in different places, your role or title of your position, and the full date range of your employment. Below that, you want to provide a concise, detailed description of your roles and responsibilities in that position, with particular emphasis on the types of information law schools are looking for. Strong research, writing, analysis, and communication skills. If you plan to use bullet points, we recommend around 2 to 5 max, but it really depends on your content. Also consider whether you prefer not to use bullet points and go with a short 3 to 4 sentence paragraph. If you need assistance making these types of decisions, please feel free to reach out to the Pre-Law Advising Center for some help. And finally, we have our optional sections, which commonly include information like language proficiency, publications, and interests or other skills you feel readers of your resume should know. Make sure to be really intentional with the types of information you include if you plan to touch on these topics in your resume. Consider whether it actually adds to your resume. For example, in this day and age, stating you are proficient in Microsoft Word and PowerPoint is not really as impressive as including, for example, that you are well-versed in historical archival research or using legal research databases like Westlaw. And as a last reminder, keep your audience in mind always. What would the law school admissions committee be impressed by? Let's now review some resume do's, things that you do want to keep in mind and include in your resume. Do include any positions that involve leadership, analytical, and organizational skills. If relevant, also include different clubs and organizations you are involved in and consider where this is best placed, your education section, your experiences section, especially if it was very hands-on or you had a lot of responsibilities, or your optional interest section. Do include any publications or professional presentations, again, if applicable or relevant. Also consider what sections these might be most appropriate for. Make sure to cross-check your resume with your personal statement for any inconsistencies. As one example, make sure the dates listed for the length of your employment on both are the same. A common error is listing you did something in summer 2021, for instance, when it was actually a typo that was supposed to be 2022 instead. Lastly, make sure to use a variety of descriptive action verbs to explain your experiences. Using words like conducted or worked for multiple bullet points can be redundant and boring. Add some variation to keep things interesting and precise. And now for some resume don'ts. Don't include an objective section. This information should be covered in your personal statement instead. Don't include a references section either. For the purposes of a law school application, this information will be covered in your letters of recommendation. Don't include universal skills like Microsoft Office in your interests and skills section. This is a common skill that doesn't quite pack a punch anymore. Don't write multiple lengthy paragraphs about your positions. Remember to keep it concise and specific. 2 to 5 bullet points max, or one short 3 to 5 sentence paragraph will suffice. Do not include positions prior to high school. With the exception of a position or experience, they may be started in high school but continue to engage with or partake in to this day. And lastly, don't include personal information like your marital status or how many kids you have. Let's now transition to discuss the personal statement. Your personal statement is an opportunity to reflect on your life and share with the admissions committee who you are as a unique individual. Remember, the admissions committee will be sifting through hundreds of applications. Your personal statement is your chance to stand out and distinguish yourself in your experiences, worldviews, and approaches to life and law. In your personal statement, you want to use vivid, descriptive prose with the intent to draw readers in and make them interested. Again, the personal statement is an opportunity to set the tone and establish a theme for your entire application. Importantly, it also gives the admissions committee an alternative way to evaluate your application outside of your grades, LSAT, or GRE exam, and other application materials. In this way, you want to be sure to share information that is not already included in these other materials so you are not repetitive and give yourself the most space and opportunity to share different things about yourself. In getting started, there are 2 really critical first steps. First, make sure to check your law school's personal statement requirements for the exact word count or page limit. Most schools have these preferences, and failing to abide by them can leave a negative impression on your application reviewers. Second, and along the same lines, check your law school's specific question or prompt. And again, make sure you address the specific prompt. Otherwise, your reviewers will be left feeling like you didn't follow instructions, which can leave a bad impression. After you've confirmed these 2 pieces of information, you can begin your writing process. Again, make sure to tailor your statement to each law school you're applying for, and also have others review your personal statement if possible. The Pre-Law Advising Center can provide an objective view and feedback to make sure your content is clear and organized. Having friends and family review it too can ensure that your voice is authentic and personal to you since they know you best. The key question to ask yourself before and as you write your statement is, why law? Why law school? It's sometimes easy to forget this when you start reflecting on your personal life and get into stories about your experiences, but make sure you're always tying it back to this essential question. Provided here on this slide are some brainstorming questions to get you started. Hopefully these spark some ideas and starting points for your paper. Let's review some personal statement do's. Do start with a great lead or hook to draw your readers in. Make sure you have a general theme. Also, make sure you have proper grammatical mechanics. A big part of law school and the legal profession is writing, so make sure your statement is as polished as possible. Do write clearly and efficiently. Remember, you will likely have word and page limit requirements. And lastly, be unique in your own way. Think of how you can make your statement stand out. And now for some personal statement don'ts. Don't use the resume approach, where you basically summarize and recite the same information listed in your resume. Consider diving deep into one experience or sharing information that is not captured in your other application materials. Do not talk around issues and be generic. The more details and specifics you can provide, the better, so the admissions committee can get a better sense of who you are. And don't use the "I want to save the world" approach in the sense your personal statement is overly idealistic and not grounded in any specific objectives, goals, or ways to get there. This also goes into our advice against being generic. Think deeply about what you want to achieve, why, and for whom. And last on the list, don't try to cover too many subjects. It's better to find a theme and stick with it for clarity and organization purposes. Finally, do not try to be someone you're not. The strongest personal statement will come from your ability to write about yourself, which only you know best. On this slide, we have a list of common personal statement mistakes to avoid. Review your statement for run-on sentences and other grammatical errors. Another one is talking about others at length. Remember to ensure that the primary focus of your statement is about yourself, your goals, and your why for for being a lawyer and attending law school. While others may have influenced your decision or played a role in getting you to choose this profession, talking about others extensively in your statement leaves admissions committee feeling like they didn't really get to know you, who is the person actually applying for a spot at the school. Third, avoid a casual, informal tone. To help with this, we recommend avoiding contractions and exclamation points. Lastly, avoid using inspirational quotes and rhetorical questions. Generally, these are overused and inauthentic when used ineffectively. We recommend avoiding them altogether so you can avoid coming off the wrong way. And lastly, if your law school application requires additional essays, you should follow the same guidelines we've reviewed so far. Check the school's specific word count and page requirements, check and answer the specific prompt, and try not to repeat the same information mentioned in your personal statement. Again, these additional essays are yet another opportunity to share new information with the admissions committee about yourself. In recent months, the use of AI has exploded. What does this mean for your law school application? Our advice is to check the individual policy for each school you're applying for. Some schools may allow use of AI for personal statements, others allow the use but require disclosure, some allow AI to be used for only brainstorming purposes, and others are banning the use of AI altogether, potentially even requiring an agreement that you did not use AI. Again, the most important thing is to check the policy for each school that you're applying to. If you need help at any part of this process, please always feel free to contact our Pre-Law Advising Center or the Manoa Career Center. As a quick note, the Manoa Career Center is for current UH Manoa students, but if you are a recent graduate within 5 years of graduation, you may still be able to access resources at the center. PAC is open to the public, as I mentioned earlier. And thank you so much for listening to this presentation, and please